This is going to be primarily the recruiting only stream. And for this recruiting only stream, the goal is to start a dynasty with a 1-star team, right? That's why we have UTEP. No offense to UTEP. Of course, sorry, UTEP minor folks. But in NCAA 14 and these college football revamp rosters, you are a 1-star team. And so I figured UTEP, I'd go with UTEP because, you know, I've worked in Texas, I've worked in Louisiana, I've worked at 3 schools in the state of Texas, actually. I worked at Texas Tech, Baylor, and Texas A&M. So I figured, you know, if there's a 1-star team to pick, let's go pick the one out west, you know, let's go pick UTEP. So the goal would be to turn this team into a powerhouse in college football, obviously. But the trick is we're not going to play any games. So we're going to go about this while simming every single game we play. The goal really, you know, is to see if I can build a roster, not only in real life, but in a video game. So we're going to approach this as if it were real life, you know, to whatever limits that the game allows us to, right? So with that being said, let me switch my monitor here. And what I'm going to do is we're going to walk through our roster as if we had, you know, as if I was in real life working at UTEP and essentially putting together the roster. So let me go back to offense, right? So this target number you see is 33. Well, the kicker to the offense that I'm running is that I don't use a fullback. Since I have 2 running backs, I don't need a fullback. So ideally, I would not recruit a fullback. I wouldn't take one. I just wouldn't. So this game, however, requires position minimums at certain positions, right? So you can't say like, oh, I'm not using any wide receivers and just I'll have 0 on my roster. No, you can't do that. At fullback, their position requirement for their position minimum, for fullback is 2. So I have to have 2 fullbacks at all times on the roster, even though they will never play unless it's like special teams or something like that. So really that 33 is really 31, but 2 of those are taken up by fullback. So, you know, it is what it is. But you're probably sitting there wondering, like, why would you have an uneven number of offensive guys and defensive guys? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, in my brain, right? In the way, I think at Texas Tech, we had an uneven split. I think at LSU, we also had an uneven split. I like having more guys on defense personally because it's a more rotational sort of side of the ball, in my opinion. Like, I want to stay fresh on defense. On offense, like, I'm going to have the 2 running backs. My quarterback's never coming out. The offensive line will, I mean, if they're all healthy, they're all going to stay on the field. And receivers will probably be this position that cycles in and out more than any. But on defense, I want fresh legs everywhere. So in real life, I would still have more guys on defense, knowing that I'm more likely to play more guys and rotate guys in more often on defense than I would on offense. So that's sort of the thought process behind it, right? So let's take a look now at offense, and let me explain kind of what these numbers mean, okay? Just so you're not looking at this like there's a lot of numbers going on and I do not know what any of it means. So ideally on offense here, at the quarterback position, we will take 3 scholarship guys. Now, if this game was like hyper realistic, this is sort of like, you know, hot takey for me. I would only take 2 scholarship quarterbacks. That's sort of kind of the way NIL's going and transfer portal's going and all that stuff. But in this game, we'll do 3. So we'll take 3 quarterbacks and 3 scholarship numbers, right? So that's what this number is up here for all of these guys, right? Scholarship target number. That just means that's the goal. That's the ideal amount of players at each position that we would have on scholarship. So at the quarterback position, we'll take 3. That's, you know, your starter, emergency backup, whatever you want to call it, and your development guy, right? So that's kind of the idea there. At running back, I would like to have 5. Now, I can already see myself sort of being like, man, I might take one more if need be, and maybe take from receiver, take from tight end, just because if I have 2 running backs on the field at all times, max I can have 3 wideouts, max I can have like 2 tight ends, probably realistically. So a running back, I'll say a safe number is 5. That's kind of our goal right now. So now let's look at current number, right? The current number right here, that is reflective of the amount of guys we currently have on scholarship at the position. So if we look at this, right, you're saying, oh, I didn't even touch on the colors. So you're looking at this right here. The color coding is pretty self-explanatory, but red means a guy that is currently a senior. That means this person, unless they're redshirted, right? Like, look at these guys. They don't have an RS next to their name. You see that? RS, SR. That means redshirt senior. You see these guys right here. That means just a senior. They have not used a red shirt. They still technically could, but odds are they're not going to. That's why they're in red. So they're a senior. They're going to be graduating from the team and they'll be done. So red is a senior. Yellow is juniors. Red shirt or otherwise, they're still juniors. They have a year left. Then green is sophomores. And then the white is freshmen. So you'll see as we sort of add guys and committed and get guys in the boat, right, and committed prospects, they'll be down here for each position and we'll adjust colors accordingly. But since they're underneath, that's sort of the divide right now. So let's go back to the current number thing, right? So current number refers to the amount of guys that are on the roster as we speak, right? So if we look at running back, we have 4 guys currently at running back. My target number is 5. I obviously can't add a guy in the middle of the year, so we're going to need to sign 2 kids, because what's going to happen is at the end of the season, Ronald A. Watt, also apologies to UTEP roster if this ever gets to anyone on the team, on staff, a fan, I am so sorry. I do not know this roster backwards and forwards, so if I say a name wrong, or if I like dog a player that's really good, or if I like gush up a player that's not very good, or, you know, if I say anything about these people, it's not personal. I don't know them, so I apologize. It's not, I'm not super brushed up on my UTEP football. I apologize, but that's what makes it fun. I'm not going in with any preconceived notion. I just don't know this team. So anyways, at the end of the season, Ronald A. Watt will graduate and he'll no longer be on the team. That will leave us with 3 guys. And if the goal is to get to 5, that's why we need 2. Okay. So let's go to a position that, and obviously that lines up across, right? You look at receiver, we're going to lose 2. The goal is 8. So we'll be at 7 after we lose 2. We just need to sign 1 guy. Regardless of 2 seniors leaving, our goal is to only have 8 receivers on scholarship. So we'll only need to sign 1. Okay, that makes sense. So this is the offensive side of the ball, right? That's kind of where we're at here. Think this makes sense. Oh, total need number. That's all that is literally just adding up these recruiting needs, right? Adding all those up, and you get your total needed for the offensive side of the ball. Good? That makes sense? Any complaints? No? Excellent. So that works. So let's go to the defense side of the ball, right? I'll explain what I'm talking about. So what you're looking at here is essentially, this is an Excel document that I made that reflects the roster in-game for UTEP. This is the one that we'll be simming and using, and this is our team, right? So this is the team that we're using. So if we look at it, let's take a little gander, right? So essentially, this is exactly this little spreadsheet you're looking at. I made this on my own time, obviously off camera, and it's exactly to the specs of the team is in the game. So this is exactly how I would make it if I worked there. Like, for real, this is exactly how I use it. It's not rocket science, right? It's just an Excel sheet color coded with numbers, right? So we'll go through it together. Okay, so the goal going through this, I'm just going to give you an idea from a roster management team building standpoint specific to the offense and defensive scheme that we're running at UTEP with me as the head coach, right? Head coach, GM, whatever you want to call me. So really, the thought process is on offense, we're going to run. Please don't make fun of me. It's called Deuce. So it's an offense that I created, right? I just made a custom playbook, but I wanted to do something not just like a standard air raid or, pro style. Like I wanted to throw a little wrinkle in it. So the trickery to this, it's called Deuce because it has 2 running backs on the field at all times. There's not a single formation that is available that doesn't have a single running back in it. It's got to have 2. Every single formation that's in our playbook has 2 running backs in it. Every single one. So with that being said, there is one outlier. There's a couple outliers, really. There's a couple things that NCAA 14 does not allow you to, that's not exactly realistic. So the first one is the scholarship numbers and walk-ons, right? There's no walk-ons in this game. There's only scholarship players. In real life, you obviously have like tons of walk-ons. You can have 110 on your roster max. I think it changes with the conference, but there's 110 roster number with 85 scholarship guys. On this game, there are 0 walk-ons and 70 scholarship guys. So that is already something that, is obviously different than real life, but it is something nonetheless. So that's something we have to limit ourselves to. So with that being said, let's look at our roster numbers for offense. So on defense, we are going to run a 3-4 defense. That is the defense. Some people are like, why are you not going base 4-2-5? Why are you not going base 3-3-5 or, like base nickel? I'm aware that more likely than not, most of the time base defense will be nickel defense. I am aware of that. That is why my scholarship number for corners is so much higher. It's 8. Can you see that on there? Yeah. So it's 8 for scholarships at corner because I know base nickel, you're not ideal, but more often than not, more likely than not, we're going to run a lot of nickel. So we need to have a lot of corners, right? Or at least need to have 3 on the field. So we'll recruit for more DBs being on the field than not. I just like the 3-4 defense because I'm dedicated to stopping the run. And I feel like with a 3-4 defense, I have athletic enough outside backers and stout run defenders inside that I like to let my outside backers run as opposed to my defensive ends in a 4-3 front, like a weak side and a strong side end. I don't like them being my pillars. I like having a 4-eye and a big outside backer as my pillars on defense. That way my other linebackers, my 3 other inside backers my 2 inside backers and my like floater on the other side can either get after the passer. I just think it's more malleable on defense. Personally, that's why I like the 3-4. So I say all that. Also, if y'all have questions in the chat, put them in there. Like if I'm saying something and you're like, you lost me at 4-eye, tell me. That's totally understandable. That's kind of the fun of this channel is to not like, I hate saying educate because I don't like being the figure that's like educating, but I do like to help and, maybe we can learn from each other. And if you have questions or if you see something differently than I do, that's perfect. We can talk it out. That's sort of the fun. So let's go and let me talk about defensive end, defensive tackle numbers, right? And then I'll explain this recruiting need thing here. So in the 3-4 front, you'll have 2 defensive ends and a nose tackle, right? That's a little different. That's sort of where the numbers play a factor. And you'll see as I sort of go down the line here, and you'll understand like how stupid it is that I'm going to a 3-4 defense as opposed to a 4-3, just because UTEP's current roster is not built for that. At least based on the game. In real life, they probably have it situated differently. But in the game, it's very not conforming to a 3-4, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's kind of what I want to do. So at defensive end, personally, they don't have enough. They obviously don't have enough true ends, especially for this defense. And that's, again, what's so hard, because defensive ends specifically, in a 4-3, you can maybe get away with some lighter or shorter ends, right? But in a 3-4 front, or a 34 front, I'll call it a 34 front, those defensive ends need to be large humans. So I'm talking like 6'3 minimum, ideally 6'4 plus, like 270 plus. Like, we want guys that are weighing like 270 pound plus, because they are anchors on the edge for the 34 front. So we'll look at the roster and we'll look at sort of like body types and stuff. That way we can sort of understand, like, hey, this is what we have now, and understanding like why that doesn't work. So it'll make more sense when you see guys and you're like, oh God, he's 6'1", 230. He can't function as a 34 defensive end. I know. That's why we're recruiting, and we're going to try and rebuild it. So anyways, I say that because, with 2 defensive ends and only 1 defensive tackle needed, we have 7 on the roster. We don't need that many defensive tackles, because we're only going to field 1 really at a time. And it's going to be a pure nose. So you'll see in that recruiting needs area, right, where it says -2, ideally, we really only want to have 3. And I'll explain the parentheses here in a second, but we really only want to have 3, because the idea would be sort of like quarterback, where you have like, hey, this is our starting nose, we have an emergency backup if need be, and a young developing guy, a guy in waiting, essentially in the hole. He's being developed, and he'll be a guy down the line. So the parentheses, right? You're like, Cody, you have a parentheses. Why is that? So in my brain, I give a little leeway to the guys up front, because it doesn't have to be so specific, right? There's going to be moments, and this goes to the rotational system, right? You need to have role players on defense. So I'm giving myself leeway to say, hey, if there's a bona fide dude at nose tackle, like as a D tackle, right? For us, that's a nose tackle. There's a bona fide dude nose tackle, and we have 3 guys on the roster already, but we have one in high school that's interested in coming here. I'm not going to say no to a bona fide dude, right? Like, that's just silly. Like, you take talent, no matter what the numbers are. You take talent. So if there's a guy, we will take one, right? I'm willing to go 4 noses and 6 DNs. Maybe one of those D tackles we can kick to the end, or maybe one of those ends we can kick to outside linebacker. It kind of depends. I also do that, and I leave some leeway here for the ends and the D tackles, because I also understand that maybe a 3-4 front, or having 2 true 4 eyes and a nose tackle, doesn't make the most sense when it comes to certain down and distance, right? So when I say that, I mean, let's say it's like 3rd and 15, a very obvious passing down. I don't need 2 bookend 4 eyes rushing the quarterback. Maybe I have a guy that's sort of like a leaned out, like maybe 250 something, still has good length, but he's a little undersized, a little more twitched up off the ball, and can rush the passer. Maybe I have a role player like that take one of those defensive end spots, or maybe I have an interior pass rusher that's super twitched up, and maybe he's not the build of a true nose tackle, but maybe he's like 6'1", 290 something, and very good pass rusher. I can let him rush on 3rd and 15, because what are they going to do? More likely than not, they're probably going to pass the ball. And what do I want to have on defense up front when teams pass the ball? Pass rushers. So if I can have situational pass rushers up front, I'm totally good with that. Totally good with that. So let's slide over to backers. And this is sort of where you'll understand, like, oh yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, guys, this team has no outside backers. I mean, in a 3-4 front, obviously I have a pass rush, like a stand-up outside backer that's a pass rusher, and I have a will backer that's more likely than not or excuse me, it's not a will backer. It's a, you know, whatever you want to call it. There's so many different phrases. I call it like a B backer and something like people have all, oh, excuse me, Mike. People have all sorts of different terms like an F or a B or a field or a bench. Like when I was at LSU, Aranda always called it a bench backer and a field backer. So his bench backer was someone like Arden Key, and his field backer was someone like Corey Thompson. So it was a guy that can play the flat and play, he can sort of set the edge. He can kind of do everything. The field, that's the field backer. The bench backer was like Arden Key, stand up, super long, twitched up pass rusher, right? So there's different kinds, different types, but this team only has 3, and I'm pretty confident none of them really fit the ideal mold for what we're doing. So the linebacker position is the one I'm really the most like worried about, just because like even the defensive front, like you're going to at least have some guys that can kind of make sense. The linebackers in this, I feel like are not going to make sense at all. The inside linebackers will, because ultimately like the inside backers at 34 are like, hey, stop the run, stop the run, stop the run. So they're going to be physical. Maybe don't have to run as well as they would in like a 4-3, but they still need to be able to run enough. Like our MO on defense, like our main objective on defense is we want to be fast and we want to be physical. So ideally all these cats can run, but if there's one position group in this that's like, all right, you can be a little limited, it's okay. Inside backwards, okay. Because ideally I just want them to be thumpers inside and be able to like sit in zone and kind of, you know, hold their spot. Corners, we're going to need more, but that's obvious, right? Like I don't need as many safeties as this game has. I understand, you know, heavy nickels. Maybe they like this team. I'm assuming UTEP in real life, when they go nickel, they probably have a safety come down. I'm good with having a corner because for me, I'm going to play a lot of man. And so I want my third DB to be able to cover in the slot. Like that's really what I want. So I'll take more corners than I will safeties because my third DB, I want to be able to cover. So they're going to lose 1, so that'll put them at 5. We need to sign 3. Safeties, they're going to lose 3. Perfect. We're good. So we don't need to really add anybody. So ultimately, we'll add 10 on defense, 9 on offense with our kickers leaving. So we'll need a specialist. So I believe that puts us at, 20 on the dot? 9 plus 10 is 19. Plus 1 is 20. That LSU education really came in handy. Good for me. So all that being said, our goal, according to the roster, right, and the guys we're losing, is to sign 20 players in this class. 20 is honestly, it's kind of the minimum, because if I don't sign 20 and I don't meet like the position minimums for each position, the game will just sign players for me. So our goal will be to sign 20 players in this recruiting class, in our first recruiting class. And I'm not in love with that just because I don't get to play the games, which means I don't get to, I mean, I hope we win, but if we don't or we struggle, like the coaching points for me in order to like effectively scout guys like very efficiently and to do it like week after week and get 100%, it's going to take me a little bit of time. Like ideally I would love to have the 100% scouting ability in like week 2, but I don't think I'm going to get it till like week 5 or 6. I'm just not 100% sure. But we'll see. So position requirement wise, I'm going to talk about sort of, you know, I say requirements. It's just sort of when we're looking at players and we're looking at prototypes and what we're looking at, we just want to make sure we have a mold. We want to make sure we have an identity. To me, that's one of the most important things you can do in building a roster and roster management. It's all about identity. We want to have, you know, if someone looks at our team on the field, we want to say, oh yeah, that's a UTEP team. And what does a UTEP team mean to us? Let's go through it. So quarterback, you know, they're not going to be asked to carry the load until they need to. However, it's the most important position in football. So, you know, for us, it's more about flavor or type than anything. So what are we going to ask our quarterback to do? Well, we have in our playbook, we do have some pistol and we do have some read option. So, and some triple option. Like we're going to have our quarterback run the ball a little bit. It doesn't have to be their identity. However, we do not want a statue back there, right? And when I say a statue, I mean a pure pocket passer. That's not for us. We don't want that. We can, however, get away with balanced. I believe there's 3 types in this game. I think it's scrambler, balanced, and pocket. We can live with scrambler. We can live with balanced. We cannot live with pocket passer. However, pretty sure our current roster doesn't really have a juice guy. I will say these acceleration and agility numbers are solid, to be honest. I'm actually kind of impressed. Oh, okay, jukes and carrying is terrible. Good to know. Throw packer 80 and 74 is not great, but you know, we can get away with Hardison. And again, I want to re-emphasize, I don't know these people. So if it appears that I am talking crap about these players, and I've probably will, it's not personal to these guys. I don't know them. I apologize. It's nothing personal. So we're going to go through, and so really that's the quarterback position, right? Balance to scrambler. I would say height, weight minimums, not super strict, right? Because ultimately it's such a niche position. Their requirements are so cerebral. It's such a mental game. I mean, do I want a guy that's 5'10", 5'11" out there? Not ideally. You know, ideally I'm wanting 6'2", 6'3" plus. 6'1" I can live with. 6 foot guy, let's call it now, right? 6 foot guy's got to be pretty special. 6 foot guy's got to be really like moving around crazy or like super juiced up arm, something like that, right? So if he's 6 foot, we can, that is bare minimum for us, but they got to be pretty special. 6'1", we can be a little more lenient. 6'2", we're good. 6'3", good. 6'4", 5', 6 above. I mean, especially if they're taller too, they got to be a little more agile, right? Because they're carrying around more body. But, you know, in that wheelhouse, ideal measure is probably like 6'3.5" to 10. You know, we can live there. So really, like Gavin Hardison sort of fits the bill to a T when it comes to like height, weight, right? 6'2", 205, great. 6'2", 210, great. We can live there. Not Jake McNamara. Sorry. So, again, this is like the first time I'm kind of seeing the height weights for a lot of these guys. At least like in memory, I don't remember the third string's height weight. So like 5'11", 190 is not, it's not ideal, but it could be worse. So Jake's not exactly what we're looking for height weight wise. However, and he's not super athletic, but he's twitched up. Look at him, 92 agility, 92 acceleration. That's good. I'm assuming the arm talent's not super great. Yeah, 68 accuracy is brutal. 80, yeah, it's just not ideal. Okay, it's not ideal. But again, he's a true freshman, so the skills will improve. Height, weight probably won't. So running backs, we can be a little more versatile. And so since I have 2 on the field at all times, I think it's very important that they are multifaceted. And when I say that, I mean they have to be able to pass block. They have to, honestly, they have to be able to run block too, which is, you know, that's sort of the caveat to this. Since I'm not using a fullback, these guys are lead blocking for each other, essentially. So they do have to sort of be able to run block. They got to be able to pass block. They have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, because if they don't run routes, or they are going to be asked to run routes. That's sort of the deal with this, right? So they're going to be running around. They have to be able to catch the ball. They have to obviously be able to run between the tackles and outside the tackles. So these guys are going to have to be horses. I say that though, I don't want true just between the tackles runners. I would much rather live with the sort of slider build. Like if I had 2 guys back there, let me dumb it down for myself, right? When it comes to running back position, right? If I'm going to have 2 running backs out there at the same time, I am more content having 2 speed elusive guys back there than I am having 2 trucks. I would much rather have guys that can, sort of run around and catch the football if I need to in a pinch, because they can still run between the tackles. And since I have two of them, their risk of injury is lower because I can split carries between the two. That's sort of the idea, right? So if we're steering towards a certain direction, it's probably more elusive speed guys, but we can live with a thicker, bigger back if we need like a situational red zone guy, right? Like if we're in the goal line and we need a guy to like pound it between the tackles, maybe we have one big grunt guy at running back to go, just be a boulder in between the tackles and just run through the line. But I think majority of the roster, we're taking 5, right? Ideally we got 2 elusive starters, 2 elusive development guys, or maybe it's a true jack of all trades back somewhere back there, and a big grunt guy, big heavy hammer back to help us in the goal line or red zone. So that's sort of the running back position. Those guys, I really just wanted to have fun and be like, what's some sort of wrinkle I can do with an offense? I decided to go 2 running backs. Why not? Wide receiver. Wide out, we have Tyron Smith is kind of that guy. He is probably the most twitched up dude on the team. I think if we look at it and we went straight like speed, agility, acceleration, I think he's the guy that's got the most gas out of the group. Let's see him as a pass catcher, right? Like he's pretty elusive in the open, pretty elusive in open space or in the open field. Doesn't carry the ball well, but he catches great, right? Spectacular in traffic, route running, all that good stuff. He's great. So he's probably going to be like our main target, ideally. And I say that because we're not playing any games. Again, if you're in here and you weren't here at the beginning, the whole point of this dynasty on Thursdays is we're not playing any of the games. We're simming it. It's straight team building only. On Tuesdays, we do gameplay. So that's when we'll actually play the games and grind it out, stuff like that. So with this one, recruiting only, and just hoping to God when we sim that UTEP plays their hearts out. But you'll see the majority of this roster is not super athletic. And again, no shame on real UTEP. Whoever decided to put the overalls on these guys, they did not give them a ton of gas in terms of athleticism. So that'll be a big priority for us. We want guys that can run a little bit. And for me, again, receivers sort of, for us, with us, right, in this offense that we're running, we don't have a ton of receivers out there, so I don't really want to have a ton, like a wide variety of body types at receiver. That's just for this offense specifically, right? Like, I don't want to have a ton of slot guys. Like Tyron Smith, we can get away, right? 5'7", 180, like, and he's so twitched up. He's clearly the best receiver on this team. Sure, we'll keep him, right, for now. But in the future, we don't want a ton of 5'7", 180 guys, right? That's just not going to work for us. So I think what we want really is to live in the 5'10", 6'3" range. I think those are guys that can sort of do it all. I think that's what we're going to want to do. We're going to want more do it all guys as opposed to role guys, right? So I think we're going to live between 5'10", 175 and 6'3", 210, 215, right? Like we can live somewhere in that world. And I would say that we have, if there's something we're not going to give in on, right? We are not going to take slow guys. That's just not what we're doing. We're going to take speed. We're going to have guys that can run. So we're not going to, like, you can be 5'10", 170, burner. You 6'3", 210, whatever, burner. You have to be able to run. That's just, we're not going to give in on that. So that's going to be our identity, right? We're fast, and we are a fast, athletic team. That's what we are. So at tight end, it's going to be a little more interesting just because we're going to use inline Y. We're probably going to use them flexed out in the slot. So our tight end needs to be all encompassing, right? They need to be able to run block. They need to be able to pass block. They need to be able to, wiggle and separate. They need to be able to catch the football, right? Because we will throw the ball to the tight end, or at least I hope the game will throw the ball to the tight end. That's part of the goal. So tight end's going to be asked to do a lot. Our tight end right now, Trent Thompson, skill set wise, excellent, right? Strong, good agility, good acceleration. Good with the ball in his hands, good trucking, good break tackle, carries it okay, catches the ball, excellent, right? Great catching everywhere, great route runner. Can he block? Yeah, I mean, 72, 68, it's not ideal, but it's not terrible. He's pretty multifaceted. So the only issue I would say with him is he fits more of like a true fullback H-back build. He's 6'1", 248. He's not long enough for me. Ideally, we want minimum height for our tight ends is 6'3", just to be honest. I want 6'3 to 6'7, 6'8. 6'8 guys aren't really going to exist, but 6'7 guys, there will probably be a couple 6'7 options. They just have to be athletic, right? Our tight end has to be athletic, and they got to be an ass kicker. So we want guys that are strong and athletic. That's kind of the goal. If they don't block efficiently, right, if like the ratings aren't super high for blocking, that's okay as long as they are strong and fit the height weight requirement, because they should get better at blocking. I think the technique is something you can develop. So we can live with long, athletic, and fast, or excuse me, long, athletic, and strong. We can live with that. So let's say our minimum really here, minimum's probably 6'3". Again, 6'2 has to be an absolute freakazoid of an athlete, but 6'3", I would say 235 is probably our low, because at 235 and being able to block and be effective in the run game, you got to be strong as hell. So 6'3", 235, and you know, top end is probably like 6'7", 270, because at that point you're getting into tackle range and you're going to look like an offensive tackle out there. And you know, maybe we can have a role player as a tight end. Not really part of I don't want to waste a spot on offense, especially because we're limited in numbers already. I don't want a ton of role player guys on offense, and if I am going to have one, it will be the bruiser at running back. Moving to offensive line, tackle specifically, our rules at left and right tackle are going to be the same for this case. In real life, maybe you want the, you know, maybe less athletic guy right tackle, or the guy that's lacking a little bit more length, you can move it right tackle. We don't have that information on this, so we'll just kind of stick to the same rules. At tackle, I'm 6'4" minimum. Okay, 6'4" is our minimum height. Weight wise, we don't want any tackles sub 280. I think in this game they lean guys out. If I remember correctly, I'm not 100% sure. Oh man, those are some big boys now that I'm looking at it. Man, our minimum right now is 295, so I'll go 285, 290. We can live with that at tackle. Interior wise, I want 300 pounders. Like 300 pound minimum. Ideally, you're upwards 310, 315, because I want maulers in the run game. Like that's what we are going to do. And along the interior, we're going to run the ball and be ass kickers. We're going to be strong. So interior guys, we can live with 6. Man, this is the one I really fought myself with, like for a long time, fought with myself. I don't know if I want to go 6'2" minimum on interior, but I think we'll do it the same as quarterback, right? 6'2" we will allow if they are an absolute monster. Like if they are a complete ass kicker road grader, we will take them at 6'2". However, 6'1" and below, not for us. We are not doing it. Not for us. So 6'2" plus can play inside. We're good there. They just got to be at least 300. Like if you're going to be small, you better be a squatty fire hydrant that's going to just smoke somebody off the ball. So we can live with that. So really that's the offensive line. But keep in mind, like we're going to, you know, what's the focus? The focus is to be killers in the run game. So we want guys that can run over defensive players. We are strong on the offensive front. We win with leverage and strength. That's our goal, right? Athleticism to a certain degree is necessary, right? But our whole goal is to blow dudes off the line. That's our goal. So athleticism, not super necessary. Strength is a must, aka this 98 strength guy. That's pretty good. I think Byers is on this team. Yeah, Jeremiah Byers is actually like a very good player in real life. I think he just got drafted or is going to be drafted. But like 6'4", 315 guard, sign me up. Like that's what we want. What's his stats? Yeah, like 86 across the board. Awesome. Like we will take those. So that's sort of the idea there. Defensively, oof, man, I just saw the height weight of this guy, and that makes me so sad. So, oh my goodness, I can say so many bad words right now. So, schematically, none of these dudes fit. I mean, none. Like 6'3" is our minimum on the defensive end. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. 6'3" is our minimum. We want trees at defensive end, right? Like I want 6'4" plus, ideally 6'3" we can live with, but 6'4" plus, like 265, 270 out here. That's what I want at defensive end. If they're 290, great. If they're 275, sure, that's fine. 270, sure, that's fine. But we want, like, I mean, none of these dudes cut it. Not a single one. What about the other side? No. Crap. Okay. So, like, not ideal, but it is what it is. So that's what we're working with at defensive end. Defensive ends will primarily be run stoppers for us. The goal is to stop the run enough times to get people into passing downs. Then you can rush the passer. You earn your ability to pass rush. I think I very much feel that. I feel very adamant about that. You earn the ability to rush the passer, right? You do that by stopping the run. D tackle, do we have any true noses? We do, actually. That's very promising. Like 6'1", 315, we can live with that. 6'2", 285, we cannot. 6'1", 265, we cannot. 6'2", 285, not ideal. So I would say our minimum nose tackles will be 6'1", ideally over 300 pounds, right? Like anybody sniffing 290, you're not a true nose, right? Like we want our guys minimum, I would say 6'1", 300 is probably the minimum. So like Keenan Stewart works. Kelton Moss works. Not going to work. Not going to work. Not going to work, right? So 6'1", 300 minimum. Ideal fit's probably closer to like 6'2", 6'3", and like 315, 320. Like these guys need to be big bodies that can sit there and two gap and just be like, all right, dude, like no one's moving me off the ball. Like I'm going to sit here and plug the middle. That's all I'm doing. He's going to be a true zero technique right on top of the center, immovable object. That's the goal. Of course, I say that. What we'll do too is obviously as we have better personnel and we have more guys, like I was talking about earlier on the sheet when we were looking at roster guys to fill the roster with, we'll have situational pass rushers, right? Same with defensive end. Situational guys will have one, maybe two role situational rushers on defensive end and D tackle. We need to determine which outside backer is our rush side and which side is our flat contained side. So I will use bench and field because that is the one I'm the most familiar with. So our B backer, we'll call him a B. Our B backer, our bench backer will be our rush end, or excuse me, our rush backer. That'll be our pure pass rusher, our B. So we'll make that our left outside linebacker will be our pass rusher. So the personnel is so messed up in this right now. We'll have a better idea of doing it once we get to do position changes and we have guys come in and signed and committed, whatever. We'll get a better idea of like what each position really looks at. For right now, I'm not even gonna like mess with it. I just need to have guys that can like function and play right now, which, you know, sucks, but it is what it is. So we'll go through, but ideally for our pass rush backer, our left outside linebacker, our bench backer, this guy will need to have length and will need to have speed. Minimum here is 6'3". Even then, that's a stretch. If they're 6'3", they better be able to haul ass. Like they got to be able to run and be super twitched up. Ideally, this guy's 6'4" plus. They can be thinner. I'm not against that, especially at the college level. I'm good with a 240 rush guy, especially if they're long, right? Like if they're 6'5", 6'6", 240, great. If they're 6'3", 240, not ideal, but we can get away with it. But for a rush backer, they got to be tall, they got to be able to run, and they got to be able to rush the passer. That is what our bench backer is doing. They're rushing the passer. That is the job. And if not, they're playing in the flat and they're able to cover the flat. So they have to be athletic. The goal is for this guy to be long and athletic, no questions asked, right? That's the goal. So we move to inside. Well, actually, let me go to the other outside backer. So the other side, the field backer, right? This person has to fit more of a complete style. So the field backer is going to be asked to cover the flat, sometimes cover more in space, like drop into zone a little bit more. They're going to be asked to run to the football. They're going to be asked to set the edge a little bit sometimes. So this guy's got to be able to sort of do everything. They got to be able to cover. They got to be able to stop the run. They got to be able to they really got to be a 3-down player. So with this, ideally this player is somewhere in the 6'2" we can get away with. It's not ideal, but we can have minimum 6'2" here. Probably in the 230 plus range. I think that's minimum 230. Because this guy still has to be able to contain, right? Like this person's still going to be asked to contain and set the edge over there. They'll have help with their 4-eye, but they're the force player, right? This guy's the force player to move the ball carrier back inside to traffic. So this guy's still got to have some density and some strength to him. So I think 6'2", 230, you can get away with it. Ideally, this guy's like 6'4", 240, or, you know, closer to 245. Like I like this guy to be a long, athletic, physical guy. Like this one's probably one of the harder positions to really nail down just because they're going to be asked to do a lot of things. So this guy, it's tough, you know. It's more of a physical type of player. Like this guy's really more used for contain, because this is also the guy that's going to come off when we have nickel, right? Because our pass rush specialist is still going to stay on the field when we throw the extra DB in there. We'll have our 2 inside linebackers stay. This is the player that's going to get subbed off when nickel comes in, right? So when our 3rd DB comes in, this is the one that gets replaced. So really, this is going to be more of a run defender, but they're going to be asked to do a lot just because not everybody runs on 1st and 2nd down. So this one's kind of got to fill a myriad of, you know, position requirements, but at the same time, they're not exactly going to be asked to play every single down, if that makes sense. So they can be a little more fluid with this one, but again, I still want size and I still want athleticism, right? That's ultimately the goal with this. So let's go back to middle. Like I was saying earlier, right? You know, we actually have a good group. I don't love 6-foot linebackers personally. I want longer guys here. I just want a bunch of like freak show tarantulas out there, man. Like I just want long guys that cover a ton of ground. So 6 foot, I would say 6'1" for us will be the minimum. I would say 6'1". I'll say 6'1". We'll call it 6'1" minimum for linebackers. All these guys fit. Like all these guys are great. I'm gonna say 220 will be our minimum height weight. So we'll go 6'1", 220. Because you can be 220. Our guys still got a thump, right? That's what our inside linebackers are going to be asked to do. They're going to be asked to stop the run. Ultimately, end all be all, they got to be able to stop the run and be able to stack and shed blockers. That's what they have to be able to do. So being a run stopper is very important for our inside linebackers. Now, ideally they can run. Ideally they can get sideline to sideline. They'll be asked to drop into zone coverage. They'll be asked to do that. They'll be asked to blitz a lot. We blitz our linebackers a ton. So they really need to have good short area, right? Like the agility and acceleration is very important for these guys. Long speed, not as important for this position. This is like the only position on the team that we really are willing to sacrifice some long speed at. They have to be twitched up though. They have to have good change of direction, agility, acceleration, all that good stuff. So these guys fit the height weight requirement. Again, I would say our minimum is 6'1", 220. Anybody taller than that, like 6'5" is probably our cap for inside linebacker height weight. 245 is like if you're in the 250 range, you probably need to be kick down inside, like to D line, probably if you're in 250, we can live with 245. Like if you're 245 and you can run, awesome, perfect. Like we can live there. Corner, I'm going to group corner and safety together. We're probably going to just look at our DBs all in a similar light. Our corners have to have size, and we have to be able to run. This, if there's any position group that we are going to change in terms of fitting our, our motto, what does our team look like, right? That's what we talked about earlier. What is our type? What does a UTEP team look like? We are fast, and our DBs and our receivers will signify that. Like we are going to be able to run at DB. I would say our DB requirement, height, weight wise, will be 5'10", has to be an absolute burner. We'll do it like the QB. Well, excuse me. We'll use the QB method on that one for minimums, right? So 5'10", you got to be rolling. Like you got to be like elite fast. 5'11", you got to be pretty damn fast still. Like you still got to be able to run. 6 foot would be ideal. If we had teams of 6 foot 180 guys across the board, I'm good with that. 5'10", I'll say 5'10", bare minimum, 165 weight. I can live with 165. But again, you got to be hauling ass. Like you really got to be running if you are in the 160s. That's like Emmanuel Forbes actually at Mississippi State this past year. Like he was 165 at the combine. The dude's an absolute ball hawk. So like, yep, you can live with 165 if you're going to be having 6 career pick sixes, something like that, 5 career pick sixes. You're good. Like he's totally fine. He can check out. He checks out. He's good. So let's call it 5'10", 165 bare minimum. Have to be an absolute burner of an athlete, absolute dude of a corner. That's the only way we live there. Height maximum doesn't exist. Weight doesn't really exist. If you're 210, maybe you're flirting with linebacker. 215, you're definitely flirting with linebacker, but our safeties can play at 210. We're totally fine with that. If you're a corner playing 210, you must be a freaking freak show of an athlete. Like that's Pat Surtain, like playing at like 205, 207, playing out there at corner. So we can live with it, but ideally some guys are sitting around 6 foot 180-ish. That's probably where we're going to sit more often than not. Like our guys right now are honestly pretty good. Like 6 foot 190, great. 5'10", 193, fine. Not fast enough. Really, none of them are fast enough except for Barnes. And even then he's a safety. So that's the part we're going to have to fix. But like height, weight wise, honestly good. Everybody kind of checks. Like we're totally fine. The problem is running. Our guys cannot run. So we will fix that. Safeties, same deal. Barnes is great. 5'11", 170, can run better. Ideally, he's able to run better. Honestly, ideal safety on this team is if he had Hilton's size, 6 foot 205, and can run like Barnes. He's got the size, just needs to be a little faster. Kickers and punters, got to be honest, do not care height weight wise. You can be 5'4" and kick the hell out of it, and I'm good. So just make it on kicker and just put it down there on punter. We're fine. Returners is a little different. Some people really like to have the, some people really believe like put your best athlete back there regardless of value to the team, right? Like I think Penn State had Saquon return. That's great. I'm good with that. That's awesome. I just like to keep our guys fresh, but I mean, in this case, we really have one game breaker, and that's Tyron Smith, our receiver. So I'm going to let him return all the kicks he wants. I'm good with that. Kickoff specialist, we're going to stick with the guy that can boot it the furthest, which is, it's Bashal? Oof, man. I do not know how to say that name. I'm so sorry, Gavin. Bakel? It's got to be A. Bashal? Oof, I don't know. That's going to hurt me. I'm so sorry, Gavin Bashal. I'm going to go Bashal, though. We'll see. I don't know. I guess we'll just do Byers. Congrats. You're a long snapper now. You're the highest overall, so it is what it is. With that being said, the depth chart is done. We know what our requirements are. That's great. Now comes the fun part. At least the fun part to me. Very much the fun part to me. We're going to set up our recruiting board.